9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to Freethought in Florida. Freethought in Florida is a production of the Atheist community of Polk County. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. And tonight, my co-host is Devon Graham. I'm Sarah
Hi,
Ray.
everyone.
How's everybody doing?
Really, really great.
Yeah?
Really great.
Cool. And our guest today is Dr. Liz. Dr. Liz, welcome.
Hello. Hi,
Liz.
thanks for having me. Devon.
Hi.
Hi.
I love Liz.
Aw,
I
the
want
feeling's
the world to know
mutual.
that I love Liz.
Thanks, Devon.
Also, everyone's going to notice that Liz may be a little pixely like I was a couple weeks ago. So it's not my fault, people.
Right. Everybody write an email to Wirecast and tell them they suck.
Tell them they suck. They do suck. No, but I'm back on my MacBook tonight, which means I'm going to turn off and turn into Satan, which is pretty typical.
That's fun, though. That's awesome.
It is fun.
I love it.
Satan.
So I've decided I'm going to put a pin in putting the connecting to the call studio to take calls. I'm going to wait on that a little bit. So you'll see when the little thing pops up in the corner of the screen there that you can call in if you have questions. But before we get too far, I want to make sure we say thank you to our wonderful patrons over at patreon.com/polkatheists. Your financial support helps keep this crazy thing going, and and may one day enable us to, I don't know, like just throw money at Wirecast to fix whatever this problem is. Anyway,
a really long time ago.
you can make a monthly pledge to support the show, and you get access to bonus Patreon only stuff. Usually after the show, we stop the stream and then just kind of BS amongst ourselves for another half hour or an hour, depending on who's here and how much fun we're having. And we put that stuff up for the patrons. So again, become a patron at patreon.com/polkatheists. And of course, we want you to help us get the word out, and you can do that by rating and reviewing and subscribing, sharing out the episodes. And that'll help us. Hit the subscribe on YouTube, hit the bell. It's like a 17-step process now for
You gotta smash the button.
smash the like button. That's right. I forgot I have an 11-year-old son. I should know that.
Smash it. Smash it.
So what we're gonna do tonight is Devon and Dr. Devon and Dr. Liz are going to are going to do some experiments on my brain. It may involve like electrical probes and stuff. Trust me, it'll be the most shocking episode of Freethought in Florida you've ever seen. Thanks for laughing at my joke. And take it away, Devon.
Oh, hey. Hi, everyone. So, everyone, Liz is one of my favorite people on Earth.
Thanks, Devon.
When did we meet? We met when we were at Vanderbilt. I was a postdoc at Vanderbilt, and you were faculty there. And you, you kind of, what's the word, squatted in our lab?
I did, yeah. I didn't have the fancy equipment that you all had, so I would come and borrow equipment and take over resources, and it was much appreciated.
Yeah. And then I remember, we'll get into your background in a minute. I just want to tell this story because it's one of my favorites.
What's coming? I'm scared.
Is this the story of how you both like almost died this past
That's
weekend?
coming later.
Okay,
That's
all
coming
right.
later. Almost died.
That's the one
You
I'm
might
waiting
not-
for.
Okay. But then a job opened up in Florida, and Liz interviewed, and she came back, and she's like, I was like, how do you think you did? She's like, well, I think I really charmed them with my wit and awkwardness. And I'm like, that's never been a more appropriate Liz description ever. And she got the job, obviously. So yeah. So now, Liz, tell us about yourself. What you doing? What's your background?
Oh my gosh. Like how far back do I go? So I think
Born.
Okay. This This iteration or prior? I mean, what?
Way prior. Go way back.
Let's see. So I am a first generation college kid. My was first in my family to go to college. Learned a lot on the way there. I was a biology major in college and absolutely loved that. Oh yeah, big nerd, big time nerd.
So was I. So.
Yeah. Let's see. I've lived in the southeastern United States my whole life. Spent my very early years on a tobacco farm.
As one does.
Picking tobacco worms off of tobacco plants and hornworms off of tomato plants. Yep, that was my
I'm sorry,
job.
hornworms off tomato plants.
Hornworms. Yeah.
Okay. That don't make no sense.
Man, I look like a skeleton.
Yep.
Zombie.
I love it.
Now you know how Devon feels.
This is
Yeah,
really,
it's
the
wild.
entire time
Like
last
all the
time.
time. Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah, so I've just always had this curiosity about the natural world. I love people watching. I love watching critters. I think of people as critters. We are animals, and so not to demean people, but to broaden the definition of animals. So I've just favorite childhood pastime is playing in the creek and turning rocks over and nature's gambling. Like what's going to be under the rock when I turn it over. We have a saying in the family of, when you find something in nature, especially if it was dead, did you poke it with a stick? See if try to find out how it died. Sort of everyone in my family is a poke it with a stick type explorer of nature.
It's kind of how you operate.
Yeah, I'm gonna see it again and poke it with a stick. I'm rambling. What do you need to know? What do you need to know?
There's so much we need to know. But what do you focus on now? So you are a professor
Yeah,
at an unnamed university.
At unnamed university in the
you can name it,
southeastern
it's
United States.
It doesn't matter.
I do not speak for my employer when I do these.
Ditto.
Nor any of the organizations that you're associated with, or all of the. Yeah.
My family may not even claim me. What I do.
Oh my God. So yeah, so you are a professor and you have a little bit of a research program you got going on. So like,
I do.
So what's your research interest and how'd you get into that?
Yeah. So my my current sort of program of research is trying to understand by really looking under the hood, looking at the mechanics of how brains work. How do totally naive newborn brains come to think of others as super important? How do we bond with others? How do we, of all the stimuli in the environment, how do we learn to pay attention to others? And I like to tell my students that social behavior, which is what I study, it's the neurobiology of social behavior, is the cause of and solution to almost all of our problems that we face as a species. We can use our social behavior to work together to solve, external problems, global climate problems. And so that's, a way that we can have a solution. And it's also some of our problems because of in-group, out-group issues and, all the ways that we dehumanize others. So both the cause and solution to all of our problems. And I really want to know how brains work. So I'm really interested in the nitty gritty details of mechanisms and how social brains develop.
I'm not really sure I understand what you're saying. Everybody in the United States of America gets along fine, and we all agree on things, and everything's fine. I don't. In-group, out-group,
We don't
what?
have problems.
We're fine.
No, this is out of my generous spirit that I want to help the other poor people in other places
Sure,
who don't have
right.
their problems.
USA.
Okay, do I need to be explicit and say that was sarcasm? Like, does
No, it's assumed.
No, yeah,
It's assumed.
yeah, you're good.
With us,
Like-
everything's assumed.
taken out of context, though? Well, it's divorced from time has passed. I know.
We don't have context here.
I'm here
So, yeah.
for the comedy, so
That's what I'm here for.
Cha-cha-cha.
Shit.
It's okay. Here we go.
Okay.
There we go.
So yeah.
Nope.
Oh god.
Do I have a black eye?
It's like your eyebrow like enlarged.
one giant eyebrow.
When you guys weren't looking, I took a Sharpie. Oh, I erased it.
There you go. It's gone. We're good.
That's so weird. Oh,
It is weird.
computers. Yeah.
They're so
That's weird.
computers are so dumb. Don't worry, I'm turning into Satan soon.
That's okay.
So bonding and like so how do you go about modeling this or doing this in the lab? What
Yeah.
do you work on?
Great question. So, because I'm so interested in understanding actual brain mechanisms, what are the parts of the brain and what are the causal relationships between what brains are doing and how that relates to social behavior function? To be able to ask and answer those kinds of questions, I need brains that I can manipulate. And to be able to do that, I use animal model
Children.
organisms.
Oh, sorry.
So I use animal models, right?
Wait,
so
that paper, the work that you had me sign earlier, I may need to read that.
yeah. Oh, it's fine. Trust us. We're fine.
Right, sure.
Nothing can go wrong.
No.
Capable hands here.
Because we go through a very, very similar and conserved sort of behavioral process that other mammals go through. So like mice and rats and dogs and cats. Developmentally, we go through this neonatal infant attachment period, and it's a highly conserved set of processes. Because of that, I can actually use other mammal systems to investigate these questions. So using mostly mice in my laboratory, they breed quickly. We can more readily manipulate their brains. We can also manipulate their genetics, and we can manipulate their environment. So we can ask some fundamental questions about nature and nurture and how they interact and how they actually impact the brain, and then ask specifically, do those brain changes cause the behavior changes by manipulating brains? Yeah.
So which is better, nature or nurture?
Which outcome are you asking about? And
Do different things happen?
yeah. So they're both important, right? So nature and nurture are both important. So we know that there are genes, for example, that some variation in those genes can lead to risk for things that end up with a behavioral diagnosis like an autism spectrum disorder. Or we also know that completely independent from genes, there are certain environments that can lead to what looks very similar to a genetic syndrome of autism spectrum disorder. So both by manipulating genetics and interfering with the environment, you can get that same result. So both are important. We have the evidence from just a humanitarian crisis that happened in the late 80s and early 90s and sort of ongoing for a while in Romania with Romanian orphanages, and that there were just too many children and too few caregivers. And it resulted in just a severe sensory deprivation and connection deprivation, where they just lacked the adult human connection with a caregiver, a reliable caregiver who was really there for them, and more than just like sticking a bottle in their face and changing their diaper. Yeah. And that, independent of any genetic cause, that kind of environmental deprivation can lead to an autism-like or autism spectrum disorder-like phenotype.
Yeah. Like if anyone doesn't know anything about the Romanian orphanage crisis, seriously, it's heartbreaking. I think it's still ongoing, isn't it? There's still
so there are ongoing effects from the children who were reared in orphanages, but as part of the sort of post Nicolae Ceausescu regime, they brought in psychologists, developmental psychologists, and researchers who helped them develop a domestic foster care system with really highly trained foster parents. So now if a child ends up without a caregiving family, they have families to provide for them instead of institutions where there just aren't enough caregivers to pay attention to the child who needs that interaction with a care provider. So it's ongoing in the sense that there still, for a variety of reasons all around the globe, children end up without that primary caregiver or caregivers, and they need a place. But Romania now has a really well-developed foster care system. But the kids who were in those orphanages still have ongoing brain development effects related to that early care.
It's really sad.
Yeah. And it's a fascinating story because there's so much, not developmental psychology, but policy that that led into those brain injuries, and policies like not letting women have access to reproductive care, sort of forcing people to carry pregnancies, and no longer allowing access to reproductive care.
You mean kind of like what's going on right here in the United States at the moment?
I have concerns. I have concerns. It's fascinating historically, not only for those policy issues that lead to these, consequences, but also there's a really fascinating additional sort of political history related to when individuals sort of first started to be affected by the Romanian policies in the 60s of basically eliminating any access to reproductive care. And people had to, women had to basically visit a gynecologist every month, and everything was tracked, and they couldn't deviate from a pregnancy. And you ended up with this huge baby boom, in addition to all these other economic policies that were just really, really backwards and just pushed the entire country of Romania into deep, deep poverty. And so there was not access to opportunity. And what's so fascinating and sticks in my mind about the long-term effects of these kinds of policies is that children who were born under these policies, like their parents suffered, the economic issues that were going on, as well as just this population boom that the country couldn't support, with a lot of these children ending up in these institutions, that 20 years later, so that generation grew up under these awful conditions. And when they became young adults and were reflecting on what's my mission in life, their mission became overthrow the Romanian government. And they did. So, so we have to think about these long-term consequences of, and when things were happening at the border here in the U.S., I mean, they're ongoing, but the separations where we're losing information of who, where parents are and where children are. We know from the Romanian history that, 20 years from now, when those children are going to be adults, their life's motivation may be different from what's expected, and they can't be blamed for their life motivation.
I think that stuff's fascinating. Like when the kids in cages things became really big a year or two ago, I was just like, these kids, they're gonna first of all, they are suffering on so many levels. They're being torn apart from their moms and dads and family contact, so it's like the whole environment is just decimated. And then how they're going to react 20 years from now.
Well, and then, I mean, carry that forward, right, and think about like what we've learned about generational genetic like trauma with other oppressed and marginalized communities over the years, like that carries with them far beyond their own lives.
Yeah, like going into the it sucks that we have to go through this. People have to suffer and whatnot, but we have these crazy, awesome case studies. Not case studies, but we have these really amazing, large-scale scientific studies. Like, for instance, the one I have to teach this one in like developmental neurotox or something. But in the winter of 1944 to 1945, the Nazis totally shut down the Netherlands. Like, no way in, no way out. There's no food coming in. They didn't have enough food there for the winter, so they had what's called the Hungerwinter or something like that. It's like pretty much everyone starved that winter. And so the women that were the children that survived that, they obviously had higher levels of depression and issues like psychological issues later in life, higher levels of suicide. The women who were pregnant at the time, those kids that came from that also had the same, very similar outcomes. And even the children that were born to women that went through that, even, like they were, the moms weren't pregnant at the time, but like they came out like a couple years later, they had very similar outcomes as well as like kids that actually went through it. So like,
yeah,
the brain is amazing. I hate it. It's amazing. It's fascinating. I love it. But there's just so much going on, and we'll never be able to just kind of isolate it and see what this one thing does. And
But
never say never, Devon. I've seen Star Trek. I know you're not a fan.
Insert Luke Skywalker. Okay.
Yeah.
What was that, Liz?
Well, I was going to say, we might not be super close to understanding everything, but we can poke it with a stick.
We sure can. Sometimes those sticks got little lights on them.
They do, and we can make the go.
So we'll do a slight, little techniques in neuroscience for everybody. This technique's a little bit old now, but it's pretty fun. So it's called optogenetics, and pretty much what we can do is we can insert this kind of it's like a receptor that's light sensitive or something like that. I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah, well, it's like how your eyes actually take a light signal and turn it into a brain signal, but take that protein and put it somewhere else in the brain.
Yes, and then you can insert like a little probe that has a little blue light at the end, and turn that on, and then all of a sudden that animal is behaving completely differently, or starving to death and needs to eat all the food, or is like going after the drugs, and then you turn that light off and all of a sudden stops. It's kind of cool. It's pretty cool. So we can do that. I don't know. I'm not a electrical person. I don't like to do the probing thing. I'll implant stuff, but anywho, it's expensive. That's pretty much what I'm trying to say. I can't afford to do those experiments. So what was the question? So as you know, Sarah and I were raised very religiously, and some people come from religious backgrounds that are really, 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 really shitty.
Yeah, super traumatic.
Super traumatic. Can we model this in the lab somehow? We're going to put our thinking caps on.
Trauma? Yes.
Religious trauma specifically. I want to model this in the lab somehow.
Yeah, so, reduce religious trauma to a fundamental, not fundamentalist, but also maybe that's what it is. But so, like, what are the key features of religious trauma? A stark contrast, like a putting something on a pedestal and saying it's amazing, and then showing you all the ways you're inferior to that thing on the pedestal. So a real hierarchical type of structure. Does this resonate? You're saying yes, but this sort of resonates.
Like,
yeah.
I
Yep.
can
So what
also
other
say-
components would go into this high contrast, good and evil.
I can think deprivation would also be one thing, because I feel like a lot of us were deprived of a lot of
things.
things, all the things sometimes.
Right, like familial connections, community, that kind of. There's an isolation component.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
For when you when you step out of line, that might be, I'm thinking like high control cults here, where your punishment is your family steps away.
Is isolation.
And the shunnings.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that definitely, especially for developing brains, is toxic. So to be avoided. Oh, really?
No bueno.
You don't say.
No bueno.
No way.
But Jehovah commands it. Sorry.
Well, you just tell Jehovah.
Oh, I have.
Shove it right up his ass.
Looking like a zombie here.
I love it. See, it's funny, 'cause then the camera, like, it'll get bad, and then it'll
Crisp.
just like clear up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
Like
crazy.
my-
I love it.
My pimples when I was a teenager. Just there and then they weren't.
Indeed. All right. So yeah, what else?
So we were modeling that in the lab.
It's
Yeah.
right. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Already.
So you've got this like high contrast sort of declaration or framing, building a cognitive model of good versus evil, and plus some deprivation, where a main form of deprivation is social isolation. And it's like really by yourself, like go to your room and don't come out for a couple of days, or like you can only be with this group.
Yeah.
And you should in no way ever talk to those other people.
Yeah.
Oof. Yeah, that's pretty bad. So one of the high contrast and social deprivation, sort of really building in-group versus out-group model that you can either it either totally works for your brain, or your brain sends off all these alarm signals of like, get out.
The resilient versus the non-resilient.
Danger. Or how easy or not is it for you to conform, or accept, like maybe it could be easy to conform, but you see that it's difficult for others to, and you don't like that, sort of having high sensitivity to exclusion of others.
Liz went away. I have taken all my bad things in life.
The devil has taken
and
her.
it's all gone to Liz. Oh my god.
There she
You're
is.
back!
I'm back.
Thought we lost you forever.
I thought I lost me forever too.
Everything that's bad that ever happens to me in this show, it's happening to you all in one night. It's crazy.
What? Can I have a heads up on what's coming?
Okay, next up. You're gonna fall out of your chair at least.
Yeah. No, that's what happened when my tab crashed. Yeah. She missed that part.
Oh no.
No, we're good.
We're good. Everything's
even know
great.
what
Nothing's. I don't know what
startled.
we're talking about.
Not a problem.
We're designer experiment.
Yeah.
We got
So
our
there-
resilient versus our low resilient
Yeah.
or non-resilient.
Yeah. So there are definitely reductionist models, so animal models, that help us tease apart these different components, and we know that they impact long-term development. We're kind of missing.
Oh, that water's really going to your head, Liz.
It's
Okay, no, it's not water.
Kungaloosh.
potato water.
Good old-fashioned tater water.
Potato water.
It's a southern delicacy.
That we have models of all of these kinds of deprivation, but they're not typically combined into one to sort of represent like what would it be like to develop under an oppressive authoritarian fundamentalist regime, right? Because that's it's not something that's ethologically relevant to the model. It's like, because there's not an authoritarian fundamentalist, regime in the mouse world.
The king
but
of all
there's,
mices, right?
What?
Yeah. But there's the
Mine beg to differ.
you should ask like the rats of Nim.
Ooh, that's a good deep cut. I love it.
But the component parts of lack of access to playmates, for example, we know during the juvenile period, even for mice who don't actually play that much, it's like barely detectable above baseline behavior. Rats play a lot, but mice not so much. But that same period of time where rats are doing a ton of play, even if mice aren't playing, they need social connection with other mice to be able to build a brain. They need to build a brain that can handle this kind of information, and be able to regulate their own responses to other mice they may encounter in adulthood. So like that social isolation piece, we know from our animal models is super important, and we know from human experience, we know that's really important. So that is sort of modeled, but somewhat in isolation from this larger picture, but we can make these connections to that kind of developmental experience that humans would experience as abstract and human specific as a totalitarian, authoritarian, fundamentalist upbringing would be.
Gotcha.
And we also have evidence from animal models that exposure during development to certain types of individuals, specifically based on what they look like. So rats, for example, come in a variety of colors, different patterns, and depending on who you're reared with can influence your empathic behavior towards others as adults. You can sort of demonstrably more empathic towards those who look like the individuals you were reared around. So that's what that tells us is, one, development is really important, and forming your in-group, or who is representative in your in-group, happens during development, and it has consequences for how you sort of connect and are empathic and pro-social later in life. And it also tells us that it's not genetic, right? It's not because someone looks like you. It's who you were reared around. So you can even rear rats with mice, and rats are natural predators of mice.
Oh, yeah.
And if you rear rats and mice together and allow them to have, social connection as young animals, in adulthood, rats are not predators of mice who have had this experience. And mice who lived with rats actually prefer hanging out with rats.
I mean, rats are
in adulthood. Rats are awesome.
Yeah, really awesome.
Right. So this kind of evidence is telling us, how, at least it tells me as a scientist and as a parent, I want to make sure that my child experiences a wider variety of ideas and people who don't look like me, people who don't look like her. Right. So a broader perspective. And, for humans, that can also come in the form of what we read, what we watch. It doesn't necessarily have to be, all in person, but having exposure to others that are different. It pushes that boundary of what fits under the tent.
Gotcha.
What is she doing?
I think she dropped her box of wine or something.
I'm drinking bourbon smash this night. I forgot to put my charger.
Good Lord.
I'm a hot mess at all.
So that really connects with me as someone who grew up in like small town Midwest, 1,400 people, corn, soybeans, and white people as far as the eye can see. Like English was the only spoken language. Just a real insular sort of. I shouldn't pour and talk at the same time. I have no idea where I'm at.
Two things at once.
But yeah, that I really connect with that as my own experience growing up of being taught some of that systemic racism stuff that wasn't overt. Simply by when we went to the nearest, and I've told this story before, but when you go to town, and town was 45 minutes away. To the nearest, larger city, and I still have a reflexive memory of anytime you turned, like you're driving down El Dorado and you turn on Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, my mother would click the doors locked on the van because you were in the neighborhood.
Right.
How mortified were you?
Stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
Yeah.
Because those were people who weren't like us and didn't look like us and
Yeah.
didn't come from the same experience as us. Like, even just the rural versus urban component of that.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting that even like natural predators, if they
Yeah.
can change, why the
Yeah.
hell are we unable to?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah. Well, so
Yeah.
I mean, I think what it tells me is that, I think we are able to change. I think, what we have to do is continue to recognize how important those developmental conversations are, and the developmental exposure. What's in your library at home, and what does school look like. I've talked to my parents. I had a very similar sort of life experience growing up, Sarah, that, a rural area, at least, for my first 9 years, very homogenous, very white, very Christian. And, my parents, I've talked to my parents about this. My parents, never say anything negative about others. They're just very kind people, and they don't say mean things about other people.
Yep.
And so growing up, I never, in our own home, I never heard explicit racism.
Right.
I never heard mean things about other people. But in the community that we lived in, there was a variety of perspectives, a variety of opinion within the white domain. Variety,
You're
variety.
very
I mean,
polite about
a
this.
spectrum of no to very white supremacist, but an all white, so diverse,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
0 to 100 white supremacy.
The diversity of
So much
whites.
diversity, yeah. But so we were in this community, and my little brain is built based on my experience. It's a Bayesian algorithm. I'm building based on probabilistic encounters of stimuli being associated together. I'm building this brain, and without explicit instruction, I'm learning about the world, and I'm learning about how some people who look a certain way have more value than other people in this environment. And I'm also hearing, outside of my household, but hearing other people explicitly say racist things.
Yeah.
And my parents, being the non-confrontational, don't want to, rock the boat folks that they are, never calling anyone out, never
Yep.
saying, at least having a conversation afterwards, like, well, you heard what that person said, who's actually your babysitter. Well, we don't agree with that at all. Like they never,
Right.
they're in a generation of like, if you don't talk about it, it goes away, which is not how brains work.
Yep.
No.
It all that information gets folded in, and you build a model about how the world works. And in reflecting, as an adult, I've spent a lot of time reading about neurobiology of racism. There's a field that's emerging on the neurobiology of racism, and as a social neuroscientist, I'm very interested in this question. And reading more about it and reflecting on my own lived experience, how much you miss out by developing a brain that just absorbs racism and does racist things. I talked to my parents about this, and talking to my mom about a specific situation from third grade that just stands out so much. So in third grade, it was a one-off year where I went to this private school. I'd gone to public school, and we were in transition. We were moving from the country to the city, and private school was the option for that year. And in this school, I made some friends, met a little girl. We're still friends. She's a very talented artist. And so, we were like school supply buddies, because that's the kind of student I was in school. And she was white. She was white. And then there was another girl who, very similar, loved school supplies, loved stickers. I mean, we had so much in common. And I would come home, I would come home every day talking about Danielle and Kelly, and just how much fun we had. And oh, you should have seen a sticker book that Kelly brought. It was so great. And just my friends Danielle and Kelly. And I started inviting Danielle to spend the night. Danielle's the white girl. And so Danielle comes over to spend the night. I go spend the night at Danielle's house. But I'm still Danielle and Kelly. And at the end of the year, it's actually, school's over. It's the summer. I'm transitioning to a new public school now that we've made this move into town. And my mom asks, you invited Danielle over a bunch of times. How come you never invited Kelly over? And I just, well, she's black. That's not, my parents had never said that this was not allowed. But my brain, swimming in this racist society, had said, that's not going to work out.
That's just
so So by never talking about it, never addressing it, it just never opened a door to it's actually okay to not behave in that very racist way. Mm-hmm. But my brain was developing and absorbing all the information that it was giving me, and the information that I was receiving implicitly, never spoken out loud by my parents, and my mom was horrified. Yes. that this is what these are the conclusions I had come up with.
Where did she come up with these? Oh my God.
Right. So, it's the kind of thing you miss out. I totally missed out on, having there she goes. Missing out on having a lifelong friendship. That was very good and very terrifying. But I am open to getting to know Satan, because maybe I won't.
Is that a friend, Satan?
Yeah. So anyway, that's my long-winded story that I often tell my undergrads when we get to the part in class about neurobiology of racism, that it's bad news for you miss out.
You do miss out,
and you don't have to have explicit instruction in racism to build a racist brain.
Mm-hmm.
No, you don't. It kind of like this is what's kind of going on in Florida right now, is that they want to eliminate critical race theory or whatever, and I'm not even sure what critical race theory is, but I feel it's being like a code word for we don't want to teach anything that's not the white Judeo-Christian history of the United States. Like we were founded by God-fearing people, and slaves wanted to be here and stuff. Like that's what I feel like they think critical race theory is.
Right.
And I think when we're eliminating things like that from our schools in Florida, I mean, we have some very diverse areas here, but at the same time, we also have some, I don't know, it was just like how I was raised. It was like all white, all rednecky. Like, I think it's a mistake to remove that from those areas, like from just schools in general. There's an overlap in there with the with the Christian nationalist component of this movement too, where it really is a revisionist history. It's that we don't want to look at the realities of what happened, right? Christopher Columbus was a fucking hero who came here and founded a new nation. And the founders are these, again, this is your authoritarian, they're gods. We put them on the pedestal for having created, the best nation on earth. So yeah, anything that's a challenge to that, there's definitely not good around here. It's not good. And I don't know if you knew this, Liz, but they're changing the civics curriculum in Florida starting next year. I think it changes this summer for next year, but this was voted on in 2019, but they are going to teach a hardcore, Judeo-Christian 10 commandments are the basis of our laws. Just like this is just the stuff Sarah said. This is what's going to be taught in public schools in Florida starting in 2022.
Yep. All our founders were good God-fearing Christians, and
they're going to add the Jeffersonian Bible to that.
Oh no, not.
We don't talk about that.
No.
That's just the parts they don't want to talk about there.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's crazy talk. Also, I want to make a side note that if you ever want to see a really cute video, go watch videos of rats playing. It's adorable.
Mm-hmm.
They're really,
Did you know you can tickle a rat?
You can.
No kidding.
Yeah.
They make noises.
Yeah, rats make very, very good pets.
They're really good.
They're clean. They don't smell awful compared to mice, which are, especially male mice, are just really rancid.
And dear God,
Yeah.
don't even think about getting a guinea pig. Those things are
Oh, yeah.
nasty.
I got one. It's adorable. I don't care.
They're
Yo,
nasty, Devin.
I
They're
love that.
nasty.
I love that thing.
Yeah.
I love that.
And you have to clean it out like once every 4 hours
I don't.
because it's nasty.
But it's really cute. It's really cute. I
They
really
are
like
cute. They're adorable.
He just makes the weirdest noises. I kind of love him. It's like supersonic. So yeah, this is fun. This is crazy fun. Liz and I talk. We go drunk hiking almost. Well, we haven't been going that often lately because I got hit by a truck.
Yeah. You're looking lots better, by the
Thank
way.
you so much.
Yeah.
Ah,
However, I look like I've been hit by a truck.
patrol truck. There you are. You're adorable. We go drunk hiking and we talk about all this stuff.
Do we though? I mean, we
do.
go hiking. Pre-game.
We almost died last week.
Yeah,
gosh.
I've been waiting for this story. You teased.
Okay.
This is like a newscast. You teased the big story.
Mm-hmm.
We died.
Yeah.
So we go to this park. Tom. Well, we were at Tom Brown Park this time, and I always have my dog with me. He's a pit bully thing. He's
He's cute and
cute.
full of energy.
He's full of vim and vigor. I don't know. He's a real pain in the ass. He's looking at me right now. But he's no slouch. He's protective, I guess. And so we're just walking, and like this is like there's all these crazy paths on in this park.
Let's go in the woods.
Let's go in the woods. I'm like, okay, it's really hot out here on the.
It was hot, so getting off of
Sure.
the pavement into the woods was going to be a nice reprieve.
We're like 3 feet in, and like this little like it's a garter snake or something.
It
just
was
kinda
a smooth earth snake.
a smooth earth snake, just kind of like went right in front of us. Like it
Yeah,
was like
non-venomous, but pretty quick
Very
moving. A nice solid gray color, quick.
Yeah, it's fast. Very fast.
And I, like I said, turning rocks over in the creek and gambling, nature's gambling is like one of my all-time favorite activities. So seeing a snake, I get really excited and I want to go back and I want to look and I'm like, I was leaning into the grass looking for, where did it go?
So was Cabot. So was the
Yeah. Yeah.
I just have this great visual of you and the dog, like both in the.
Where'd you go? Come back here. Come on, touch me. Yeah.
But it was kind of startling because it just like
Yeah, sure.
it just happened. And so
Yeah.
like that was crazy.
And you're like energized and excited and we saw a snake and woo. And like I can tell right away, not venomous. I'm just excited. I'm pumped.
It
I
was
want to
little.
see. Yeah. Yeah.
We could have stepped on it.
I totally could have got him and taken him home. But I wouldn't do that because he belongs in nature.
He sure does. He sure does. So then we're walking up. Oh, Cabot's getting nervous. He's remembering. So we're walking up, and then like we're at like a dead end. Like, which way do we go? Which way do we go? And this,
You and the dog are in front of me. I'm sort of
Oh, yeah.
straggling behind
Oh,
with my
right.
short legs, right? Long legs is in front, short legs is in back. And, like Cabot's pulling. And I hear this like buzzing sound and Devon starts talking about how these flies are, oh my gosh, these flies are around this dead snake. And I'm like, God, those are loud flies. And she's
Let's
like,
go look
she,
at the snake.
she like reaches her hand out and like, I want to see it. Oh, okay, a dead snake. Let me look. Let me see. And God, those flies sure are loud. And so I look around and she's like, oh, it's dead. There's flies everywhere. I don't think you saw flies, but the buzzing, it was a ginormous rattlesnake. And that buzzing was its rattle.
It was not dead.
Oh
It
shit!
was not dead.
See, this is why I don't pick up rocks. Okay.
And it's just like,
And I grew up in the country.
So it was this. It was like this big around. And if you know a rattlesnake, you know that if they're that big around, they're only like 4 feet long because the poisonous snakes are stubby, right? They're short, but they're so wide. That's my telltale, from a distance. How long and skinny is it? Long and skinny, we're good. Short and fat,
thick,
we've got
not
problems.
so good. Yeah.
Yeah, short and thick.
And it moved towards us.
Thick. That's the problem, right? So it was, still frozen, but Cabot on the leash is just like, let me at him. And so then the snake starts moving. And he's like, he's halfway up under a bush, and then it's, a little bit of a like red clay, maybe like 6 inches drop off to just the path we were on. And he drops, like he's trying to fix himself, but he drops right into the path. And then he like, they're more afraid of you than you are of them. So he's trying to get up back into the bushes. And at this point, like I could totally see he's got all the markings. Like for sure, this is a big old adult, like nasty, gonna kill you. Like 1 in 10 people die from venomous snake bites.
And it's you today.
Yeah, and it is us today. Somebody is dying today, and it's got all the right patterns and markings and everything. And this thing is so big, and it's fallen down into the path, and it's trying to get back, like trying to escape to get back under the bush. But it's the route that it's finding is towards us, like it's coming towards us. And it's still rattling and going up. And Devin and I are just like falling over each other, like each trying to grab and pull. And just 5 seconds ago, I was like, let me dig in the weeds for that other snake we saw. Yeah. This. It was intense, and then we essentially ran screaming from the woods, like just
very
ridiculous.
Careful, we were very careful.
Yeah, we got out, and we were then on the pavement the rest of the time until I convinced her to go back in the woods. But it was much later in a different park.
I'm sure that was a very sobering experience.
Oh yeah,
it was.
You're right up.
That far in.
Yeah. And but if you've been in this park, or in any park like this, the roots are everywhere, and they're exposed. Like roots are exposed everywhere, and so your brain is just root or snake. Oh my goodness. Would you like to know more about the neural pathway for deciding root or snake? Because it's been worked out.
Is it really?
Well, it's Joe LeDoux's fast and slow path, amygdala project.
We're gonna go down the Joe LeDoux route. Yeah, it's getting real the amygdala.
Yeah.
This is nerd talk.
Yeah.
Nerd talk. Yeah.
Nerd talk. Oh God. Yeah, we almost died. That may have been the end of barefoot.
Just
barefoot seltzers.
Devin, I think you should maybe just stay indoors from now on. You go
that.
Outside, you get hit by a truck. You go outside, you damn near
the largest timber rattle. It wasn't even timber; it was the eastern diamondback. Yeah, it was the largest rattlesnake I've ever seen in the wild.
It's big.
And I'm okay with rattlesnakes at a distance. This was too close.
That was way too close.
It was way too close.
Not a fan of snakes.
Yes.
I like them, but not that close. And I also don't like multiple in a row, because when you see like that high probability of, okay, this is multiple snakes in a row. What snakes am I not seeing?
Right.
What's the next one
like that.
come across?
Right. Oh fuck! There's a nest. That's the next thing.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my God! But that buzzing like fly sound. She's like,
it's dead.
No.
On it.
Oh, Devin,
Dumbass.
you're so pretty. Hey, I want to throw a question in the middle of the room that might be, I don't know.
Okay.
That might be a hot topic. I don't know. You tell me.
Okay.
So I heard you say snakes belonging in nature, and I don't know that I agree that snakes deserve to exist. But I don't like snakes.
Let's not mess with our ecosystem, peeps.
Well, okay, so that's the question then. If snakes belong in nature, how do we all feel about the ethics of animal testing and using mice and rats as in testing?
Yeah. Now we're getting into the awkward conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if you want to take this, Liz. I can't. I can go for a bit. So I obviously love animals. I have pets. I would not have killed that snake probably.
You almost fed a snake. Yeah.
Almost fed a snake. I'm being very nice to it. But I mean, we also do animal testing, and I feel like it's necessary for what we're trying to get after. The way let's clear up some misconceptions about animal testing.
Yeah.
It's not done all, random. It's not like I walk in the lab and be like, I'm just going to inject a mouse with this and we're going to see what happens. No, it is a privilege to do it. You have to go through, I can't even begin to tell you how many hoops you have to go through to get access to the facility that has the animals. Like, so I'm also on the Animal Care News Committee, which is like the committee that decides for the entire campus what experiments can happen on animals and which ones cannot. And it's pretty intense. Like, there's a lot of stuff that we do not allow. And when you do propose an experiment to do something, it has to be non-duplicative, so it cannot be like replicating what someone else did. If it's already been done, why
Right.
that,
We got that data, move on.
we already
Okay.
know this. You have to do searches on alternatives, like, can this be better? Is this better suited to be done in like the cells, or can you do it like on the computer? Can we model this somehow? Are you using the bare minimum number of animals that you possibly can? So things like that. But it's a process, and like to do that. And once you get approved to do the research, it's not, you're still getting like surveilled. You have to annotate everything. We do multiple inspections every single year. I forgot. Twice a year, and then they can be. I think the vets sometimes do just random ones, sometimes weekly. And when there is an issue, like there is mistreatment or someone's doing something that they were not approved for, it's pretty serious. Like people have lost their license to experiment, I guess you could say. Like they've been, like they're funded to do all this research, but they're not gonna be able to do it because they have lost that privilege of doing animal research. So, I mean, I get why people don't like it. I totally get it. I don't want any animals to be harmed, but you do it in the most humane way possible, the least amount of pain possible. And for the most part, like most experiments don't involve pain or anything like that. They're pretty basic. I mean, my stuff, I just put rats in a maze and they
watch them. Right.
I don't know. Or watch them eat funny stuff. Like, do you like this milkshake? I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. Am I missing anything, Liz?
No, I think that's pretty important. Sort of coverage of the guidelines in place for just having, checks and balances for people who want or need to use animals in research. And there's another side to the story as well. It's in addition to gaining knowledge about how the actual world works so that we can, do a better job understanding the world and have a reality-based world. There are also, there's critically important need. There are some, genetic syndromes where there's just extreme difficulty. And some of those can be modeled. And if we can do a better job of understanding what is the mechanism of the difficulty, then can we take available drugs or invent new drugs that can help? Is there a surgical approach that one can use, like a deep brain stimulation approach for resolving motor impairment in a genetic syndrome like Huntington's disease, or perhaps in Parkinson's disease? And so with knowledge gained from animal model research, we have a much better understanding of the broader context of how brains work, and even outside of brains, other systems.
We don't pay much attention professionally from the neck down. Just
I do.
Sometimes I
But
do.
I got these whole babies with kind of leaky parts that cross into other areas. So I am interested in a lot of things that babies do. But so building up a fundamental knowledge so that when there's a critical need to address something like what is happening with the loss of smell in COVID, right? well, we have this foundational knowledge about how sensory systems work that allow us to more quickly make predictions about what's going to help for people who lose their sense of smell, which is really their sense of flavor when it comes down to it. I mean, we think of, your taste is what you're doing when you're eating, but that's so limited, right? It's flavor, it's olfactory, right? When your sense of smell is really what contributes to flavor. So, that sort of like, fundamental knowledge about how nervous system works puts us in a position to be much more quick to step in with understanding when there's a problem.
It's just really funny that I'm the one who's gone down the philosophical road, because normally I hate conversations like this. Like, oh, let's talk about free will.
Blow my brain out now.
But listen, like, I can imagine, and I'll tell you, like, my awareness of this comes largely from talking with Monica Miller, who also serves as legal counsel with the Non-Human Rights Project.
She's like the head of
American Humanist Association.
American Humanist Association.
Yeah, right. So she does. So she also does work with this Non-Human Rights Project, and one of the things that we've been talking about a lot lately is a case that they're trying to get through the courts with Happy the elephant.
I don't know Happy.
Removed. The idea of keeping captive animals and dance monkey dance kind of stuff, and so like I can imagine an absolutist position that might say, even if it benefits us, too bad. Again, it's still a living being that can't consent to all of the things that we're doing to it. Or even, we're really into philosophical land now, the idea of like, if there were because we think about, I think we justify this, maybe not consciously, we justify a lot of this kind of thing in terms of sentience or intelligence or whatnot. I think a lot of people look at it in sort of that framework. So like imagine an alien creature or something that's 10 times our intelligence as a sentient creature, and they've chosen us to do experiments on like that kind of stuff. People sit around and bat that stuff back and forth. But I can see all sides of that issue.
I agree. I see that side too. But until we have better methods of treating these disorders and diseases, and until we can come up with something better, we are doing the best we can with what we have.
Yeah.
I know that's not like the best answer, but I mean, at some point we're going to be able to do designer drugs on the spot just based on your genetic, your genetic makeup. We're going to be able to do that at some point.
Here's another question. As the non-scientist in the room, how far forward would we be propelled in sort of these areas of studies if we could just, and I know we're off the social behavior track a little bit, but like if we could just use some stem cells to do some stuff with, like. Would that move us farther forward in the way of like testing, at least? I don't know.
I don't do much cell work. I don't know if you do, Liz, and I don't. We can use some stem cells, right? Like the lines that are already available at the moment.
Right, as long as they're not like good Christian babies.
If they're not derived from little
white
babies somewhere.
Right.
Is that it? I can't remember like there's some legal issue. I'm not sure.
I don't remember where we are in terms of what is allowed. I have done cell culture work before, but it's been from not reproductive cells, and mostly not human cells at that.
Yeah.
We just hear so much about like, oh, if we're going to, tackle this disease once and for all, whatever the disease is, being able to actually work with stem cells could really jump us forward in that sort of testing.
Yeah, I think when that was it 15 years ago when the stem cell thing was really hot, like this is going to be the cure all for everything. I think we've come down from that high a bit. I mean, stem cells have been really important and really
Right.
helpful in some
But they
diseases.
weren't the magic pill.
They weren't the end all be all though.
Right.
That we imagine them to be. And
Yeah.
I
But that could be said about pretty much any single method approach.
absolutely
Sure.
Absolutely. Anytime there's something big in science, you just kind of wait a few years, and then well, it was okay.
There's something else big.
Something else happens the next day. So yeah. So with stem cells, I don't know. I do know people who have actually been treated recently with stem cells. I didn't
Yeah?
think that was going on as much anymore as it is, but yeah, it's still a thing. Who
Yeah.
knew?
Yeah, I haven't kept up with it very recently. I know that there are researchers working on it's called induced pluripotent stem cells that can actually be extracted from the tooth root pulp. So when a child loses a baby tooth, you can extract the cells from that, and then do some give it different chemicals that sort of help put it into a state of what's called pluripotency. So a stem cell is a totipotent cell, meaning it could be all things, right?
Dirty.
Yeah, right.
The first cell that could become any kind of cell,
Right.
given the right chemicals, the right cues to say be this kind of cell. And induced pluripotent stem cells, like from the tooth root, they have some potential to be a variety of different things. They don't have the totipotent,
Right.
total potential,
Right.
but they have plural potential, pluripotent. So some situations like that are being used for individual cell cultures where individual genetics, like for individuals who have a genetic syndrome, grow their induced pluripotent stem cells and ask specific questions about, how do those cells respond to a particular drug target pathway compared to an individual who doesn't carry that genetic syndrome
Right.
difference. And so using those kinds of experiments, I think provides some insight that you couldn't do otherwise. In terms of having a viable culture of cells that you could pass and test and split and grow.
Sure.
Yeah.
Good times. Yeah, I know that like bone marrow transplants. I'm gonna go in a slight
Please.
off tangent or whatever, but like bone marrow transplants were kind of a huge issue to get because you had to find the exact right donor back in the day. And it was just finding that specific donor that had the same type of whatever cells you had was difficult. But now we've developed drugs that you can actually, if you know there's going to be an issue with your bone marrow at some point, like you're susceptible to a certain cancer or whatever, they can actually derive your own bone marrow, like your own stem cells, your hematopoietic, your blood cells, and they can grow them from your own for a future date, so you don't have to depend on the bone marrow transplants like you used to.
Yeah. And potentially doing that in combination with gene therapy. So you
Right.
get your own tissue, the genetic problem is fixed with like a CRISPR solution.
CRISPR.
And then, the opportunity exists that you get your own cells back, but fixed.
Right.
And that, potentially can help eliminate some of the immune response, transplant rejection issues that people who need transplants have. So, and, back to this question of, animal research, like this is possible because we have this foundation of knowledge that's built upon how multicellular organisms work in the animal kingdom. And, I think there's also a philosophical argument to be made about the sort of historic arc of animal research and maybe what the future looks like will be informed by the animal research that's done now. And that's a horrible freeze frame. Like my eyes roll back in my head while I'm talking about the future. Yeah. Right. So like a future scientist is going to reflect back on what we're doing now. And, even with our, intentions of, how we're framed and how we think, but with the current knowledge that we have operating within an ethical system, where the information that informs that ethics changes over time, right? I mean, this idea that like elephants or dolphins or other non-human primates, that there's some sort of sentience there, that's informed by research on them,
Right.
right? Where they were held in captivity, and so that couldn't have been known definitively without first knowing it.
Right.
Yeah.
And to know it in the way that science uncovers things, science as a process of manipulate and measure, and looking for causal connections. At least my favorite version of science does that.
Yeah, I think that's a decent argument, the idea of like, okay, we've done this research, but it's not just a human benefit. Like the benefit to that species itself is borne out from that investigation too. And I think God, just think of where we've come in the last 100 years. 100 years. Just think of where we come, how far we've come. And thinking about like what my Star Trek future looks like, the idea of like legit being able to just repair, regrow organs and that kind of thing. And the most complicated of which is the brain. And you think about the brain damage and how irreparable that is, and what little we know about what we can do with that.
Or at least maybe not irreparable, but how long it actually takes to repair, right?
Right.
The effort involved to
Right.
get back to some level of functioning
Right.
in an adult brain.
Yep.
Is really challenging.
Yeah.
But I hope that I'm doing my animal research kind of like I raise my kids, in that
You poke them
in
with a
that-
stick in the brain with a little blue light at the end.
no, but like I mean,
I'm sorry, that's what I took away from this, Devin. I don't know.
Okay, then I'll just leave it at that. No, but I want my kids to be like, yeah, it was done right. She did well by us, and I don't want my great grad students down the line be like, oh my god, can you believe they used to do this shit?
Right.
Like, this was a waste of time, or they didn't use the resources that they had.
Oh, history will judge us harshly.
They were going to cancel. They're going to cancel my research. And
Yeah. I believe that. I believe that history will look back on us and judge us harshly.
oh yeah, absolutely.
But you do that not knowing the position that people were in at that time. Like we do that with our own histories. So
It's true.
yeah. God, this has gotten deep tonight. Well, what happened?
It's okay. Are we going to go into prison reform now?
Okay.
Well, you're driving the show tonight, so you pick where we go.
Driving. Don't make me. God. Okay.
Because I'm tired of driving. I drive all the time. It's your turn.
All the damn time.
Your
We
turn.
could talk about prison reform from a neuroscience perspective.
Yeah.
The brain injury associated with juvenile detention, the brain injury associated with isolation.
You're telling me that like locking people up and
In the sensory deprivation chamber is bad for their brains. I am.
No shit.
Well, we started this topic, Liz and I, after we almost died by snake. And she's like, and we're walking along this little path, and she's like, I was looking up on the park website here for the town, and right by this park there is a federal women's prison, like right there. And it, like she said, like, was it in the fine print? It said this park is maintained by prisoners, like prison labor.
It's a beautiful park.
Beautiful park.
I bet it is.
Great. But
Yeah.
like,
All that
it
free
got us
labor, I bet it is.
it got us on this conversation. Like, do we still enjoy this? Because like it's a great park.
Yeah.
But and I guess the prisoners get out of their cells and they're in the nature, possibly by snakes that may eat them. But,
Clearly.
But I mean, they're probably earning 10 cents an hour.
Right.
And why are they in jail to begin with?
Why are they there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should they be there to begin with? Because I guarantee they're not there for I don't know, murdering half their town.
Right.
They're there for smoking
Well,
pot and getting caught.
I think I've gone well on record over the past few years of doing this media stuff. That I'm disgusted in the way we handle people breaking the social expectations, right? Because that's really what it is, right? We've created, this is what society should look like. Here's the rules that you have to follow in order for the society to look that way, and if you break them, here's what happens to you. And that, on just that simple like explanation of it sounds, you would think like, hey, well, the rules, so you should be able to follow them. But then you factor in homelessness and food insecurity and mental illness and like
Trauma.
all of these other
Trauma.
conditions that like play into why a person might break the social contract. And we don't
Or didn't break the social contract and are in jail anyway.
right.
because the system broke a social contract.
Right.
Oof.
And
Any
so
fans of The Wire here? What have I got?
and so we don't, it is not a rehabilitative system. It is a punitive system. This is a modern version of you fucked up, so we're going to throw you out of the village. Go live in the woods for a while with that rattlesnake that might kill you. Like,
But it's even worse than that. We'll throw you out of the village and confine you to
Right.
a small box.
full of
Yeah,
rattlesnakes.
where you have no agency
Right.
whatsoever.
Right. Yeah.
I-
God, it makes me so mad. Sorry.
Me too.
So what is the
food is
neuroscience
green.
behind prison? They are green.
So
You're hulking
so
out.
imagine that you have people who have been put into this in this position, many by no fault of their own, many by the circumstance of their neurobiology or social system that put them in a place that made them more susceptible, right, to being caught up in this and taken away. So you have people who may be struggling to start with, and then you put them in the system too, right? Like what the compounding results of that have got to be just insane.
Yeah. And I think that's been part of the difficulty. Devin asked, what is the, neuroscience? And that's part of the difficulty if you stick to human subjects research, because it's hard to know, okay, say you have a group of prisoners and you want to look at their brains compared to a non-imprisoned population, all the comparison you can make is prisoner versus not. You can't answer any questions about were those changes or those differences there prior to imprisonment, and is that a contributing factor to imprisonment? Are those changes that are there, or those differences that are there, are they a result of imprisonment? I mean, there's some sort of statistical ways that can give you some clues, like maybe comparing how long someone had been imprisoned. So within the prison population, duration of imprisonment, but that's also confounded with a relationship with how, what it is that they did that got them in prison to start with. I mean, it's not perfect, but there usually is some expectation of a relationship between the type of crime and how long you're in prison for. And so there are all these like confounding variables that make it very, very challenging to pin the cause. And to look at a brain difference and say, that causes this, or prison causes this to brains, because the cause and effect can't be sussed out because all the data you have is correlational. There's no experiment. There's no take people off the street, a random sample who've not committed any crimes, and put them in jail. Although maybe you could do that with sort of the number of people that we have in jail. Maybe there is a sample. People who are in jail for the same amount of time, those who are and are not guilty. So
Minority Report style stuff.
That's one of the things that animal work can help with, because you can look at cause and effect. Additionally, we already touched on that Romanian example as part of the this is children, not prisoners, but that same sort of like sensory deprivation that these children experienced in institutions like that. that are not so unlike prisons. That, one of the perspectives prior to evaluation of those children were the same things I mentioned already. You don't know if the children end up in institutions because they come with a liability because of their family. Like their families already have problems, and then they get dumped into institutions, and so it's a heritability or a shared environment problem that's leading to their placement in an institution, or is it something biologically different with that child who gets them in the institution, or is it the institution itself that's changing the brain? And one of the profound studies that has emerged from Romania is really the only time we've ever been able to do an experiment on humans about sensory deprivation in childhood, which is while studying children at the same time that you're building a foster care system from the ground up, and you can randomize by lottery children to enter this foster care system. So then you're actually doing an experiment saying, of all these kids who are in this institution, and we randomize them to stay in the institution or go into one of the foster care homes that we're building from the ground up. It's a lottery. And then evaluate based on when they left the institution, like developmentally, their age, actually evaluate what are the outcomes in kids who left early versus kids who languished in these institutions. And it's so clear. I mean, that's really the best experimental evidence that we have, because it was truly an experiment of, all these kids from the institution, but randomly assigned to treatment or control conditions. And that clearly shows that prolonged institutionalization in development, this very social sensory deprivation, results in long-term adverse consequences for developing brains.
Yeah. So that's another reason why we need to do animal studies, because, I mean, that was obviously not meant to be an experiment in Romania. It just... Right. It's just like a pattern of convenience. We're building this institution. We can actually lay to rest this question by documenting this process that we're going to go through anyway. And what other system are you going to devise to allocate kids to a system where there's just not enough foster care homes? Random lottery. But running a actual clinical trial, like a human experiment where you follow someone from, like birth to death or whatever, or even like a smaller portion of their life, so exorbitantly expensive. Like,
oh, I'm sure.
So expensive. Like, it's expensive enough doing animal research, but trying to... I can't imagine the cost. Like, if I had to start my own country, I would probably be the opposite of what I want to be, and I would be like surveilling people constantly, just to see, just as a scientific experiment. That sounds terrible, but the scientist in me wants to know what happens and how it got there.
Yeah.
So.
Instead of Skynet, we'll call it DevonNet.
Yeah.
Follow people around, spy on people.
I'm really good at spying on people.
Noted.
What do I need to know?
Should I be concerned? Yeah, right? Jesus.
Very, very conspicuous, everybody. Oh my God. This is crazy.
Chiclet tooth there.
Oh, God. And that's the screenshot I'm going to use for the thumbnail. Well done.
Yeah!
Well done, Liz. Good job.
Don't worry. I think the one of me was like, my nose was like really bruised, and I was like...
Yeah, that was great. Yeah.
That was a good one. Thanks for that one. Oh, my God.
Sometimes I put effort into it, and sometimes I don't.
It just doesn't matter anymore.
YouTube gives you 3. It automatically, generates 3 thumbnails, and sometimes I pick from those, and sometimes I take the time to scrub through the video and find a good one. Yeah.
Sometimes it's just too much effort.
I was on a show recently. Sorry, I'm derailing. I was on a show recently where they did a thing that maybe we should start doing, which is before we go live, like, okay, everybody smile, or like, all right, laugh, act like you're laughing at my hilarious joke, and then we take that as the screenshot. Like it's a planned screenshot. Anyway,
That would be good.
I don't know if I like that.
You need a crowd energizer, crowd booster.
yeah.
What are they called? There's a name for those people.
Like crowd wranglers, crowd.
I'm not a woo girl.
Woo!
That's me when I'm really drunk at the bar.
Are you talking about a fluffer? Anyway, Devin, what were you going to say?
Shit. I don't know. So what else do we need to talk about? I don't know. Have we covered everything there is to know about social neuroscience?
Probably not.
Good.
No, but you can sign up for courses at an unnamed university,
Yes.
and
Liz is the best teacher, everybody. I'm telling you right now, the best.
She doesn't know what she's talking about.
That's not true, because I have undergrads who have had you, and they're like,
Aw.
I just love Dr. So-and-so. I love Dr. Liz. She's really... I almost slipped right there. I just love Dr. Liz. She's so funny. Oh, you know her? I'm like, yeah. I'd get drunk with her all the time. I've seen...
I mean, she's sober, but...
Guys, I've seen Dr. Liz make a Chicago bouncer turn ghost pale, dying of embarrassment. I don't know if you remember that night.
Yes.
That was awesome. Okay.
and then there was that one time in the woods with the snake,
And then we almost died.
We
almost died.
Yeah.
Have you thought, Devin? Have you thought of a good topic to save for our after party chat?
Our after party chat.
I wish I would have saved one or two of my thoughts for that, but it's too late now.
I mean, there are so many options.
Mm-hmm.
I thought we were going to do the snake one, but then I thought we should bring it up here because it was funny.
Yeah, no, that was really good. Yeah.
I don't know. What should we do? I feel like Debbie in Napoleon Dynamite. That's a good look.
Well, maybe it'll be a surprise.
It'll be a surprise. That's fine. That's fine. I don't know. I think that's it.
That's it. We did it.
Are we done?
Did it?
We
We
did it
did
before
it.
9 o'clock.
Wow. That's amazing.
All right, now if everybody will send in $1,000 to
Yes.
PO Box 4803, Haines
have
City,
an actual
Florida,
PO box?
and yeah, of course we do. Why don't you? 4803 Haines City,
there's
Florida
something.
33845. We'll get your diploma right out to you for just $1,000, and yeah.
Do you want the letter graded or the pass-fail version?
We'll make whatever letter grade you want.
Right, for $1,000, we'll do whatever you want. Yeah.
Whatever y'all want. Mm-hmm. Oh my God.
Okay, so we'll find something fun to talk about in the Patreon bonus segment. What else is going on? Do you have anything coming up? Is there anything exciting? I know Free Flow is being planned. We sort of talked about
Yes.
that.
Flea Flow.
The
It's March,
Freethought Florida conference.
March 5th?
Something, I don't know. March. It's a long
March?
ways away.
May?
Things can
Oh, a
change.
year from now.
It's a year. We are planning
You are
so
planning
planning.
ahead.
so far ahead because we don't have any. So it's like we're really excited that someone actually has something on a calendar, and we're like,
Right.
goddamn
And
right.
there's a thing to do. The American
There's
Atheist Convention is shaping up
Easter weekend
to be a thing.
in Atlanta, and
Zombie Jesus holiday.
Zombie Jesus. Believe me, we celebrate Zombie Jesus hardcore. It's already half the directors in the meeting the other night were like, "God damn, we're gonna be so drunk." I'm like, "Hell yeah!"
Yeah, right.
So excited to see
We have so
people.
much time to make up for, and yeah, seeing people.
Oh.
Right.
Yeah,
There's a study for you.
There. Will you please sign this form? Before
There you go. We can talk about the effects of a pandemic on our society. And why didn't we learn our fucking lesson from the 1918
flu?
pandemic? Yeah. Okay.
People
save
are
it.
challenging.
Save it.
Social behavior, the cause of and solution to all of our problems.
Woo! Brought that full circle. Hell yeah. Yeah, but the hotel is it's in a very it's a district. It's around like a bunch of
You're talking about
stores,
American
shops.
Atheists, right?
American Atheists. I'm going back.
It's in
like
Atlanta. We're in Atlanta this
Yeah.
year.
it's near the Brave Stadium, and there's a lot of stuff to do around there. So
Yeah.
it looks like it's gonna be crazy fun. As far as things that I'm doing, we are starting our bicycle drive on June
Nice.
1st. So Humans Tallahassee, in collaboration with the Temple Israel, we are collecting old, preferably adult bikes. We'll take kids' bikes, but preferably adult.
And
we're
when you
gonna-
say old, you mean like repairable,
repairable, if-
refurbishable.
we would prefer them in
Can't
the
talk.
best shape possible.
Maybe
Right.
they just need new inner tubes, tires, and
Yeah.
wires.
Stuff like
Yeah.
that. I have a couple Boy Scouts that can help fix. We have a bike mechanic that can help out.
There you go. Yeah.
But
Little,
we're also taking donations for that. But what it is the International Rescue Committee brings all the refugees into Tallahassee, and some of them, like, they don't have driver's license, like, obviously. They don't have cars. So how they get to work is they rely on the public transit system,
which is
sucks ass
garbage
here. It's
everywhere.
garbage here.
Yep. Yep.
And or we can give them bikes, and so that's what we're trying to get
That's
bikes
awesome.
for.
Is there, as a neuroscientist, I have to ask, is there a helmet partner program that goes with this?
Oh, I
So-
love that.
Where if there are children, we're going to give helmets for the children. So, but we're trying to figure out the logistics of, can we have used helmets? I don't know if it's like baby seats, like you can't. Like,
That's
use
immediately
baby
where
seats.
my mind went.
I did too, but
Hashtag
the-
parents.
Oh yeah. So yeah, if you have helmets and they're in good shape, I'm sure we will take them. But I don't think we're gonna purposely hand out like a helmet with each bike. I don't know
Okay.
how many we're gonna get.
I mean,
'Cause
if you
know,
have
like,
them.
If we have
Sure.
them, yeah, well,
Yeah.
sure. But like
Yeah.
during the pandemic, everyone bought bikes. Like everyone bought bikes because they're home. What else are they
Mm-hmm.
gonna do? They need some sort of exercise. And
Yeah.
I had to go get my bike repaired at the beginning of the pandemic, and it was something easy, but it was like a month-long wait for
Oh, wow.
for the part to come in, because they had sold out of all
Mm.
these parts and everything. So everyone bought bikes in the past year, and I guarantee 90% of them are just sitting in someone's garage, like,
Yeah, work from home's over. Back
you
to
don't need
work.
that bike no more. So if you have them, devon.graham@atheist.org. You can, if you're local to Tallahassee.
If you're local to Polk County,
Polk
contact
County,
me
we'll
and
figure it out. We'll
we'll
figure
make
it
it all
out.
work.
We
I
can
will.
drive places.
I have a truck now, Devon.
What? Oh, that's right.
I can load it full of bikes and
You
come
can
see
put some
you.
Stuff and come
Yeah.
on up to Tallahassee. It's a good old time.
Whoo, boy.
Oh, lordy, it's a good time. Welcome to North Florida.
South
but I-
Georgia.
South Florida.
So when is there a deadline to that? Is there
We're just doing it in the
ongoing?
month of June.
Okay.
Month of June, and so it's ongoing. If you,
Yeah.
I mean, I'll take one tomorrow. It's still May.
Sure.
Whatever. But yeah, that's that. Oh, we lost Liz. Liz is Satan now. It's so creepy. I love it.
I love it too.
Maybe it's There you
Aw.
are. You're back. You came back.
Maybe it's the Tallahassee internet, right?
Oh, boy.
Okay,
So
so that's cool.
What's going on with us?
People can get a hold of you for that. Last night I was on with Neil the 604 Atheist. Do you know Neil?
I know of him.
Neil does this thing where he does 3 or 4 shows a week that are like an hour, and then he has this fucking 4-hour after party. It's insane. You think our shows go long sometimes. This is crazy.
Oh,
And it started at 8 our time. So it
because
was
he's out west, isn't he?
yeah, he's in northwest British Columbia. Yeah.
Oh,
in
way out there.
in Canada. And sorry. And it was a great time. We had a lot of fun. I talked about like my journey out of religion and dealing with being trans and all of that stuff. And then we had a big long after party that like it was tomorrow when I was finally like, guys, I gotta go. I can't do this.
It's a new week, y'all.
It's like midnight 30. I have to bounce. But it was a lot of fun.
Face hurt.
So you should click on over to Neil the 604 Atheist YouTube channel and check that out. The American Humanist Association conference is coming up too. Before all of that, July 24th and 25th. We haven't worked out all the details yet, but it seems like Tiff Ho from Foundation Beyond Belief and I are going to be like doing a conversation about humanist service. So that'll be fun, right?
July 24th and 25th.
24th and 25th. Yep. For me, the idea is like atheism is useless without action. Like, oh, great. So you don't believe in God. Who cares? Like, what do we do with that? And what we do with that for me is humanism. And that's where we, like all the programs that we do where we're going out and helping people and trying to make a difference in our community and turn around some of these outcomes that are stacked against people. So we're gonna have a conversation, something related to that. We haven't worked out all those details yet, but you can register for that. We have a scholarship that we're doing with the Secular Student Alliance. If you want to apply for a scholarship, and there are several. So there's like 7 or 8 in the state of Florida. But you can get there by going to fif.show/scholarship. And you will, whatever. I'm drunk. Hang on, let me some more rum. This is more rum than Coke at this point. /scholarship and apply. Do it quickly. But there's the Florida Humanist Association sponsors one. The Central Florida Freethought community sponsors one. The Atheist community of Polk County this year is sponsoring one. And you're also like eligible for the Secular Student Alliance scholarship, like the big scholarship.
Big one.
But if you live in the state of Florida, or for us, if you're a Polk student, if you're attending college in Polk, or you're a Polk student attending elsewhere, you're eligible for our specific one. The Central Florida Freethought and the Florida Humanist Association are both Florida-wide. So if you're a student in Florida, you qualify for that. So there's like all kinds of different configurations of things that you might qualify for.
Someone's got to qualify for something.
Yeah, so do that. It's a secular activist scholarship. So it asks, there's like a series of 15, 18 questions that you have to answer. That are not that difficult, but it asks you about like activism as a secular student, and how you see your role in the movement, and what your interests in study and all of that kind of stuff. So, fif.show/scholarship, and all that is a force redirect that takes you to the Secular Student Alliance page. Is that it? Yeah. Did we cover it all?
You know what? I do have something, and I meant to say it. I meant to say it a couple of weeks ago. But Liz is here to remind me of it. This is going to sound really sad. Liz and I are going to a funeral this weekend.
Oh, okay.
But I feel like this, since we are Freethought in Florida, Richard Hall, who was he's well known in Florida humanist freethinker circles. He and his wife Elaine are like one of the backbones of the Tallahassee freethinkers circle. He died like a month ago. Is that right, Liz?
I think a little longer than a month ago.
Yeah. So his memorial was this weekend. I think if you just feel like it kind of got lost in the shuffle with COVID and whatnot. So just FYI, everybody. He passed, but he was a bit of a pillar in the Tallahassee Freethought arena. So yeah. FYI, everybody. I'm sorry to bring that down a downer, but I do love talking about death. So
hey, there's another topic for
it sure is.
We've been talking a lot lately about like ritual and traditions in as secular people. When you peel the religion away from it, what does that look like, and how it's still important?
comparative ethology, so other animals having a thanatology of like, what happens when their members die.
I love it. Let's talk about this in the Patreon segment.
Just talking about the funeral
like,
Let's talk
pyres.
about death. Join us for Death in the Animal Kingdom. Patreon.com/Polk Atheist. I love it.
I hope they have funeral pyres. I hope they do.
Elephant graveyards coming up.
There's a little rat fastening a raft to float out into the.
I think they honor their dead by eating them.
It's like, you know what? He lives a good life. It's time to.
He's tasty. Oh, and their brains are so moist.
And smooth. So smooth too.
Next week on the show, I don't know yet. We don't have anybody planned, so we'll see. Devin, see what you want to do next week.
Okay.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up and get to the Patreon fun, where we'll talk about death and death rituals in the animal kingdom. Oh my God.
I do have a good story though.
Do you?
Not really, but it's funny for me.
All right. Well, that's it for this week. Freethought in Florida is available on YouTube, Facebook, and all the popular podcast players. You can find all the links at fif.show and send us an email to info@fif.show. Like, subscribe, share out all the episodes. Liz, thanks so much for coming on this week. This was a lot of fun.
I'm frozen. Thank you so much for having me.
And come back anytime.
Thank you so much.
Don't forget the 3 most important things. Wash your hands, get your damn vaccine, and care about each other. And we'll see you next week on Freethought in Florida.